So, Rob, you did a talk today about the web. What did you talk about?
I did. Not 4 hours ago.
Oh my goodness!
It was only 4 hours ago I did this talk. So this was the 11T meetup, which is an online sort of meetup, and they get a couple of people to do sort of short talks. And I did a sort of 10-15 minute talk about sort of how my website works and the way I'm pulling in all the data and how I'm using that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think it went pretty well. I'm
Nice.
pretty sure I talked too quick, but a few people have said it was fine. So I don't know. We'll see when the video comes out.
Well, the video will be out on YouTube. On what is the site? It's 11D Meetup YouTube channel. Is basically what it's called, something like that.
Yeah, we'll get the. I will get the link in the show notes. I think it should be up
And
fairly soon.
People who don't know what 11D is, you should remind them, Rob.
Yeah, so it's a static site generator. So you, at its basic level, you throw some markdown files at it, and it will make you a website. It will convert all of that to HTML and do all the headers and footers and all the stuff you need to do to make a website, which is what I use for mine.
And where do you host your files for your website?
I am now hosting them on Hertzner. Is that how you say it? They're a hosting provider.
Is that the German company?
Correct. Yeah, it's
yes. Them. Okay, yeah, because you were on DigitalOcean, maybe, I want to say, before?
I was on DigitalOcean, and then, in beginning of last month, that was when, if you followed me on Mastodon, where I had all the drama where I got a takedown notice from Facebook and all of that, and I threw my toys out the pram and just quit DigitalOcean.
Well, because look, you are an existential threat to Facebook. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg got up on a Saturday morning. I think it was on a weekend that this happened, wasn't it? I was going to say, Mark Zuckerberg got up on a Saturday morning. He was having a cup of coffee, and the hotline rang, and somebody said, "Hey, this Rob guy, he's messing with Facebook. He's messing with all of Meta. We need to take this guy down. This guy and his static website. Somebody delete his text files right now." Yeah, no,
exactly.
I remember that. It was not handled very well by the support people at DigitalOcean. Although I think DigitalOcean, I will say that I think that they have a lot of good services and a lot of breadth of offerings and fairly competitive prices compared. I think all of the companies that do this sort of stuff. I shouldn't say all. Many of the companies that do this sort of stuff, at some point, will annoy you to no end.
Oh, yeah.
We've been there with Linode at Mac Stories. Linode was fantastic for a long time until they got bought by a big company. And now they've raised their prices incredibly high and they don't offer as much as we need. So I don't know.
And I feel like this was almost my, I'm never flying on that airline again type moment. It's like, sometimes you don't have a choice.
No.
In this instance, I was able to move stuff. It was a bit of work, but whatever. But, I was in a bit of a mood. So,
and you're still on one of the more well-regarded and bigger services out there. I mean, I know from looking at this myself that's one of the top 3 to 5 companies that usually come up when people mention this kind of hosting provider type stuff. So,
well, there was an interesting article going around probably about a month ago now called, I think it was titled "Where is all the Fediverse?" And somebody had sort of checked what servers all the instances were on and stuff like that. And Hertzner came up. I think it was about 50% of instances were hosted there.
That's interesting. Do they have a special offering for Mastodon servers?
I don't think so. I think it's just the fact that they have, their pricing is pretty similar to DigitalOcean. I think they have a few more offerings that you can do with their servers, but generally, I'm still paying about $10 a month, something like that. I can't remember, I can't work out exactly what I'm paying, but it's something like that.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Boy, how about the spam problem on Mastodon the last week or so? It's like neither one of us has been affected by it. I don't think. I mean, I haven't, but I know Federico has, and I've seen a lot of developers on Mastodon mention it. It seems to be fairly widespread, and it seems to be that some spammers are targeting relatively small servers that don't require any kind of pre-authorization to join their server as a way to then federate their spam, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and they were literally posting pictures of Spam, the food.
Yeah, I know.
Which...
Most of it seemed to be Chinese and pictures of spam, from what I could tell. And yeah, it seems like there's some structural issues with Mastodon, and I know they're trying to address it. I mean, and this feels like one of those moments. I did see a lot of people on Mastodon saying this is a good thing because this proves the popularity of Mastodon, and I gotta say, I don't think so. I mean, maybe it does prove the popularity, but I don't think you can then leap to and it's a good thing. I think this is like a bit of an existential threat in the sense that they seem to be targeting mostly accounts with large numbers of followers.
Yes.
From what I can tell, and if that's the case, if you annoy enough people with large followings and they drop off Mastodon, it's just gonna dampen the spread of Mastodon. I mean, I know that a big part of Mastodon is people shouldn't care about how many followers they have, and there's a lot of philosophical issues with this, but the reality of spreading a social network is that you are going to have some accounts that have a greater reach than others, and if those leave, it does damage the network overall, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this is one of those things, like, as much as Mastodon's been around for however long, 5-6 years or something,
right.
I think we're still in that stage where you've got people running instances with a few hundred people or maybe 1,000 or something, which is relatively small, and they've not actually had to deal with a lot of this spam sign-up stuff before. And I don't run an instance. I don't know what admin tools are available to stop a lot of this. There certainly isn't a lot of tools, from what Adam was saying, to stop the spam coming in. The instance I'm on you can't just sign up because it's a paid instance. But there certainly wasn't enough tools to stop the spam from coming to the users of the instance. So
right. And that is really the biggest problem, right? I mean, it's the fact that because anybody can stand up a server, if they don't put the protections in place against the spam, then that affects everybody else on whatever server that happens to be out there. And I'm not suggesting like that anybody I've talked to is planning to leave or anything, because I think, we're very happy, like all the Mac Stories crew is very happy being on Mastodon. But it does feel like one of those things where people just weren't entirely prepared for this, because what's happened is essentially someone's come up with a way to automate joining a lot of smaller servers very quickly and federating their spam out to various accounts. Yeah,
it's not, I feel for people running instances. I mean, Adam, who runs social.lol that I'm on, I feel for him this week because he's been working really hard to, try and stop the spam coming into people and stuff.
I bet there are a lot of shared lists of things that can be blocked. The problem with blocking, though, is that you may be blocking servers that are victims in their own right, in the sense that they had these accounts added to their server, and you might not want to block them otherwise. It's just that they happen to be generating spam because they had some people join who are creating spam.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Adam said exactly this in the Discord. He was going through the instances to block them and stuff, and he hit one instance that in theory should have been blocked, and there was I think he said it was about 60 users that sort of followed into our instance and back out again.
Yeah.
So as you say, you're then affecting genuine follows and people who want to interact with another instance, and if you block that instance, well, that's kind of they're gone.
Right, because then you're impacting like the utility of your own server essentially to your users.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's a hard problem. It's not. I certainly wouldn't want to be an admin instance this week.
No, I wouldn't either. Well, at least I don't have to deal with that. We let Alex deal with that. So
Yeah. Thanks, Alex.
Federico's been bothering him as he gets these, dozens of spam messages that are in Chinese and have pictures of cans of spam. But Rob, I wanted to mention to you that I am going all in on plain text. Not that I wasn't already all in on plain text. I was always all in on plain text for my writing, but I have been digging back into e-ink readers. I have a Books Tab Ultra, which is like a 10-inch, almost 10-inch diagonal iPad style tablet that works with e-ink, and it's Android. This was my introduction. I basically have been learning Android in hard mode by doing it in e-ink, where most apps are not designed for e-ink. And it makes sometimes finding buttons just a matter of stabbing at blank spaces in the UI, hoping that there's a button there, because you can't always see the buttons. But what I've been doing is creating a system, a read later system, that is based on a bookmarklet from the CEO of Obsidian that allows me to clip articles from the web without all the ads and all their cruft into Markdown, save it to Obsidian. And then if I want to read it in Obsidian, I have another plugin that allows me to read that in kind of their preview reader mode, which, gets rid of all the Markdown syntax and makes it look like a web page. Or I can go into my Tab Ultra and I can open the Moon Plus Reader app, which is a really nice ebook reader for Android. And the nice thing about this ebook reader is it doesn't just work with like EPUBs. It works with Markdown files. So I can point it at a folder of Markdown files that I've saved from the web using my bookmarklet. And I can read it just like any other article in a, in an ebook app. So it's very much like the experience of reading articles in Kindle without having to deal with the email forwarding and all the other stuff the hoops that Kindle makes you jump through. And by default, it does not download the images, but I can tap and get the images. And I've set up my own template where it's got title at the top, author, source URL, date published, a horizontal rule, and then the body contents. And I really love it. I mean, it's a really nice way to save articles. And what's nice about it is that I can use it both for reading, just for like, I'm taking it easy and I'm reading a bunch of tech articles that I've saved for later in the day. Or I can drop into Obsidian, copy the text out and make it like a link post if I want to write something about it for Mac Stories, for instance. So it's part of a system where I've been pulling more and more into Obsidian, making more and more of my life just plain text. And I even last night, I revisited a plugin that I haven't used in a long time, which was called, I think it's just called RSS Reader, which literally will let you put RSS inside of Obsidian. And Yeah. And what's interesting about it is that it occupies the right sidebar. And when you click on an article, it opens in a pop-up window and it looks, it's not the nicest design ever, but it's a pretty good design. But it gives you a toolbar at the top where you can do things like copy it into a note, which then just drops a markdown version of it into your notes in Obsidian. And so what I have done, I haven't like imported all of my OPML, all my feeds using OPML into Obsidian. What I did instead was, because I use Feedbin for RSS, and Feedbin supports a separate special RSS feed for your particular starred articles. I can read through in Reader by Silvio Rizzi all of my articles that are synced with Feedbin, star what I want to read later. Then I have that feed of those starred items, which syncs over to Feedbin, set to pull into Obsidian. And then later in the day, I can just go through and I can go through the list of articles and decide what to read and what to save and do all that all within Obsidian.
That that's amazing. I, I think when I started using Obsidian, I can't remember who gave me this advice. They were like, try and use as few plugins as possible.
Yeah.
If only because otherwise you can make it too complicated for yourself and you overwhelm and you're like, oh, I don't know what's going on. I'm not going to use it. And then you tell me you're doing this with RSS and the read later and all of that kind of stuff. I thought, oh, maybe I should go and have a look at some of this because I have only just switched read later app because I finally found one that I think does what I want. I'm mostly happy with it. So I switched to is it Raindrop? I have to check now.
Raindrop.io, a very, very good service. I use it too.
Yeah, I feel like the problem I've always had with read later apps, Pocket, Instapaper, Omnivore, there's a bunch of them, is all of them want you to read the articles in their, their read later format. They want to strip all the stuff and they just want to show you text.
There's some of the most siloed apps available. I've been talking about this forever, which is they make it really easy to get things in, very hard to get them out.
Yeah, and the thing is, the way I mostly use I think read later for me that's not really what I'm doing. What I'm doing is saving links that I just want to check out. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to read the whole article.
Right.
I might save it because there's a link in there that I want to, just send to somebody, or there's a bit of software I want to download. So a lot of the time, these things I'm saving for quote unquote read later are just let me save the links so that I can quickly click them and I can just go check out what they are. And the problem I was having in a lot of these, especially Omnivore was a problem, is if it couldn't read the link properly, it would just error, and I couldn't get the original URL. Whereas with Raindrop, like their Mac app is great. Like you click it opens in a nice little window on the side, and then I can open it to the web if I need to, or I can just delete it straight from there.
Right.
So yeah, I've been really happy with Raindrop.
Yeah, it's very good. And you're kind of like describing the overlap between read later and bookmarking services, which there's a lot. I mean, like good links on the iPad and iPhone and Mac is more of a bookmarking service, but it also has read later aspects to it. Raindrop is a lot like that too. I mean, traditional bookmarking apps were things like Pinboard and Delicious and all of those things. And now we're in a world where it's like kind of things are trying to be both or tend towards just the reading part. And so what I've been doing, I use Raindrop, but I mostly, and I've used it for a combination of things over time, but these days I'm mostly doing it for those things that you described as like, oh, here's an app I might want to try, or here's a web service that looks interesting and I want to check it out later. Basically things that are true bookmarks that are not for reading, and then I drop all the other reading stuff somewhere else.
Yeah, so what I tend to be doing, because I do save articles to Raindrop as well. They're articles, and I will read them and stuff like that. But Raindrop is sort of this triage service. So either it might be an article I read, so I'll read it and maybe I'll link it somewhere, or if it's an interesting bit of software, I'll either try it or I will add it to my links that I have on my server. I set up an install of LinkAce, which is an open source sort of bookmarking service that I've installed there. So I can send links there if I find them interesting, because I feel like the trouble is if I was immediately saving everything to Raindrop, for example, and I said, right, that's my bookmarks, it would just be filled up with stuff that I don't need.
Right.
So I'm using it more as this sort of this middle area before it gets sent somewhere, wherever that happens to be.
Yeah, it ends up being like a big inbox for you, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good use of something like Raindrop, and I've been using it that way to varying degrees for a while. But for me, it ends up being like the kind of software, web service stuff I want to check out later, or maybe it's a product I might want to consider buying, or a place I want to travel to, a restaurant I want to try, all those kind of things, which which then I use the tagging to try to organize that a little bit so it's easier to find things. One thing that I don't know if you discovered this about Raindrop, but they also have custom RSS feeds of your various collections. So you could pipe that RSS feed into your website or somewhere else, whether it's another read later service, another RSS reader, whatever you want to do, and use that as like a front end for Raindrop.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a very good point. I literally just made a note of that as you said that to look into what I can do.
Yeah,
with
it's pretty cool. They have a good API too. I mean, I haven't really played with the API so much, but I mean, Raindrop is one of those services that I always struggle with, because on the one hand, it's super flexible, really powerful. It has the benefit of being cross-platform and web-based, yet it doesn't, because it's web-based on the Mac, I think that you can't share with the share sheet, or maybe that's been added since, I don't know. But there's certain native features. Yeah, I don't think you can take a page from Safari, for instance, and use the share button and drop it into Raindrop directly. But there are little things like that kind of get in the way if you're deep into Apple ecosystems or whatever. But overall, I've been finding things like Raindrop to be more and more useful the more I use them. So I don't know. I'm a big fan of Raindrop.
Yeah, it's been good. I mean, I think I've helped myself because, as you probably would have seen, I now have a link blog on my site for interesting articles I find, and I think that was the piece I might have been missing, because I could find an interesting article, but I didn't really. I could have just posted out on Mastodon, but I like being able to have an archive of those. And now I've added that, it feels like I can find something and go, right, I've actually got somewhere to put this and I can share it with people. Because it's all well and good saving it for myself, but that's not very interesting. Other people don't get to see it. Right.
No, I mean, I totally understand that. And that's something we've been trying to do more on Mac Stories too, is linking a lot more. Because it's like the forgotten art of linking to other people's stuff. And this is something you and I talk about every now and then, is that one thing that drives me bananas is when people write stuff and don't link to the people that they mention in it. And it's I don't know, it's so easy. There's so many times when I do stuff with Mac Stories where it's well, I'm not just going to link this person's app. I'm going to link their profile on Mastodon and maybe their personal website, because, I mean, I don't know. It feels like the right thing to do when you're writing about someone's thing, is to make sure that people can explore to the greatest degree possible all of their work.
Oh, absolutely. And essentially it costs you nothing to do that.
Right, exactly.
I certainly try and do the same thing, as you say. If I link, I'll link to a post they've done, but then it'll be their profiles or their website or, whatever link tree they have, or omg.lol.
Right.
Just link somebody somewhere else, because they can go explore and, maybe they find something else interesting. But as you say, I think it's a forgotten art of some sort that, we can just link to things and say, this is cool, go and look at this thing.
I think that a lot of this is all tied to the decline of Twitter, and I think this is the silver lining once again of the decline of Twitter, is that people are realizing that there's a good way to share cool things that doesn't involve social media, whether it's Twitter or Threads or even Mastodon. It doesn't matter. You should control your stuff, and I think it's nice that people are starting to do that more on their own websites. And then using social media as a way to point people to what they're doing on their own thing.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Rob. Well, good conversation as always.
Yeah, always nice to talk to you.
All right.
We'll be back in a couple of weeks.
We call that a fortnight here in America. You know what we need to do between now and the next time we talk?
Mm-hmm.
We need to eat some ridiculous chips.
Yes.
Crisps, chips, whatever you want to call them. You ate some potato-shaped things with smiley faces on them, and I saw somebody on the internet, I think it was Joe Steele, say, what is this thing? And I was like, Joe, come on. Anybody, I mean, Joe doesn't have small children, I don't think. So
Yeah, I don't believe he does.
I'm going to give Joe a pass. But I knew exactly what that was that you were eating.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I had a steak ready for eating for lunch today, and then I realised that I didn't have any chips or just potatoes. I didn't even have any potatoes just to make some boiled potatoes with it. So I checked the freezer and we had some potato smileys. So that's what I had with my nice bit of steak.
Basically, French fries in the shape of an emoji.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's just emoji fries.
All right. Well, you've done a good job by eating those for this week's episode. I've got to go find some more stuff. You know those potato chips that I said before that I tried that I was going to have Jennifer take to her job? She refused. She wouldn't even take them.
Oh wow.
Yeah, she said the people there wouldn't even eat them. So I guess I really topped it off with that one. So I don't know. All right. Well, next bag, I'm going to have to realize I'm going to have to eat the whole thing myself. I won't have any help from anybody in any office anywhere.
Poor John.
I can mail them to the UK and give them to you.
Oh, good heavens. I'm not sure how well they'd survive.
All right, Rob. Well, I will talk to you soon.
All right, speak to you later.